Going, everybody? This is Ask Me Everything, Anything About Politics. Oh boy, screwing up the name of my own show. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it can be like trying to learn a new language. So, that's what we're doing here. We are answering all of your questions about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated they may be. So, if you got any questions, just put them in the chat. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. This is not one of those shows where I call people up and yell at them for having different political beliefs than me. What's up, Donkey Punch? Woo, what a screen name you got. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. There's no fighting here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. This is not one of those shows where I yell at Republicans for having different political beliefs than me, or I call people stupid, or I debate people and we try to own each other. This is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Sometimes I might get a little spicy in the comments if people are spicy at me, but most of the time I just try to answer as nicely and sincerely as I possibly can, because things are weird in politics these days, and it's difficult to figure out what's really going on because there's all this misinformation and propaganda out there. The internet is the fucking Wild West. There's right wing propaganda out there that is saying all sorts of complete and utter nonsense. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is you know, consolidating power in ways that are very reminiscent of other authoritarian governments. And and so what do we do about this? You know what I mean? Donkey Punch says, can you explain to me what a Zionist is? Yeah, there's actually two definitions of what a Zionist is. I'll give you like the accepted explanation, and there's like the extremist explanation. So the accepted explanation of a Zionist is somebody who believes that the state of Israel has a right to exist. The people that are currently living in Israel get to continue living in Israel. And then, therefore, an anti-Zionist would be somebody that believes that we should move all the Jews, all the Israelis out of Israel, and just give that land back to the Palestinians that were there beforehand. Now, there is a more extreme definition of a Zionist. A Zionist could mean somebody that believes in the supremacy of the Israeli state, meaning that they believe that the Israelis that are living there have the right to continue annexing territory, taking more land from the Palestinians, putting up illegal settlements in the West Bank, and that we should support the extremely right wing uh, you know uh, agenda of ethnically cleansing Palestine of everybody who is not Israeli. I hope that was very helpful for you. As with any term, in politics, it can be reshaped and redefined based on who you're talking to meet their political goals. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to be as specific as we can when we are talking about what policies we believe in, what agendas we support, etc. Supremacy says politics is nothing but a bird with two wings, same animal. That is wildly inaccurate. Clovis LaRoche says, why does America so heavily support Israel? Because there's a bunch of different motivating factors. Like, some elected Republicans believe that we need to empower Israel in order to bring about the rapture. There's this like Christian extremist wing of the Republican Party that is really terrifying, to consider that they hold levers of power. But there are other motivating factors, like people are worried that AIPAC is going to fund primary candidates. AIPAC gives a lot of money to candidates, so maybe they're influenced by that, stuff like that. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, excellent questions so far, everybody. Welcome to the show. There's no fighting here, just good faith answers to all your good faith questions. Paradox Priest says, can I join as a guest to ask a nuanced question that can't fit in the comments? Maybe. I usually don't have people come up on the show, but if you ask a couple questions and prove to me that you were here in good faith, maybe I will change my mind. Andy says, well, history repeats. It has and will, Eden says, Reaganomics. That's a word. Paradox Priest, I already did that one. Andy says, like the French Revolution again. I mean, I don't condone any kind of violence or property destruction. So, yeah, I also don't think that we should just wait for that to happen. I feel like a lot of people that are just waiting for like a violent revolution to happen are basically saying, I don't want to do work until I get to throw a brick. Supremacy says, I feel like it's time we detach from the world and connect to ourselves. We ignore the fact of life. What a weird thing to say. Turtleburger says, what would happen to the bat signal if Batman was elected mayor of Gotham? That's an excellent question. Breck says, APAC runs everything. That's not true. They have a lot of influence, but they don't run everything. Supremacy says, so you're basically saying Republicans and Democrats are sworn enemies? That's not what I said, even close, Supremacy. So what a weird thing to say. Paradox Priest says, I'm here to ask about Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin and their plans for reshaping America. So yeah, I've heard about this, plan to create like these tech dictatorships, corporate dictatorships across the country and get rid of democracy. And I'm against it, but I don't have more specifics about it, unfortunately. Smith Crypt says, what do you think of politics? I think politics is really important for people to be informed on and engaged on. And it is because people haven't been that we are in the place that we are today. Clovis LaRoe says, is it truly possible to have revolution without violence? Yes. And if you ask the political scientist Erica Chenoweth, who's crunched the numbers, she says that nonviolent movements have a much higher success rate of violent movements because it is much easier to demonize the authoritarians if they're the only ones that are doing violence. Michael says, is Kanye good for president? No, he's an anti-Semite. Let's see here. Scott said Alfred would need a new gig. That is accurate. AXZZ says democracy. Yes. Flamingo Moo says, what can we do to push back against what the Texas Republicans are doing? I mean, if you live in Texas, you have more ability to affect this than other people. You can call your representatives and hound them and annoy them and go to their offices. And if they are Republicans, demand that they not support this plan and make it clear to them that you will dedicate yourself to removing them from office through the electoral system, not through violence or threats or anything like that. If they go through with this plan, and let them know that you're not going to sit idly by while they decide to rig elections in their favor. If you don't live in Texas, I think the best thing that you can do is talk to your state reps and tell them that you want to do sort of like retaliatory gerrymandering to try to dilute some of the power of their gerrymander. I haven't crunched the numbers on this. I don't know if all 50 states get involved in a gerrymander war, like which side will win, Democrats or Republicans. But I don't think that Democrats should just sit by. I don't think that blue states should just sit around and let this happen. All right. Clovis LaRoche says, can you name a nonviolent revolution? Sure. The civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, Rosenberth Curry says, what you think about communism? So it depends on what your definition of communism is. I would not describe myself as a communist or capitalist or socialist. I believe in a mixed model. That being said, every company in America that is employee owned is communism, and it is successful communism, and it is working great. It is working great in a capitalist country. It works great for the employees. The product is good. So I think we need more of that. I think we should have tax incentives for companies being employee owned. I think it would do a lot to solve income inequality. Lindsay Reed says, hey back, Lindsay Reed. Lauren Hornbaker says, China owns more than Russia. Peter Thiel. What a weird thing to say. JY Jelly says, you think there'll ever be another civil war, whether it is in our time or beyond in the future? I do. I don't think so. I don't think that people want there to be another civil war. Caesar Abraham says, what do you think about Trump's tariffs? They're stupid. They're hurting America. They're hurting the 99%. It's basically, he just raised taxes on the 99%, basically. Let's see here. Hex says, what do you think about trans people? They're fine, I guess. Scott Clyra says, Merrick Garland played too nice. Now we have a vindictive dictator in the White House. I am fully open to an argument that Merrick Garland should have been more aggressive, but from listening to other AGs talk, it seems like, we don't know what's going on in that office and what evidence they have and what evidence they don't have. KJY Jelly says, why don't you run for a House seat? I don't know if I'd be good at it. I think I'm good at this. I think I'm good at answering questions. I'm a stand-up. I don't know if it's going to fit in my schedule also. Caden says, I don't think most people wanted the first Civil War. Yeah, that might be true. But actually, no, it's Canadian. It's historically untrue. Because if you talk to scholars of the Civil War, they will tell you that people have this romantic idea of what the Civil War would be on both sides, and people actually picnicked outside of one of the first major battles, expecting it to be like a really fun thing to watch, and discovered that war was bloody and disgusting and dangerous, and yeah, that changed people's attitudes real quick. Jaron says, "Are you mad at Carlos?" I don't know who Carlos is. Danny says, "Whatever happened to those cheaper gas prices we've been promised?" Yeah, excellent question. Whatever happened to that wall that Mexico was going to build? Whatever happened to his tax returns? Whatever happened to his health insurance plan? Whatever happened to ending every global conflict on day one? Seems like none of that shit actually happened. Test Call says, "Why is conservative media so less praised compared to media with left-wing messenger?" I don't know who's praising left-wing media. Test Calls, but the reason why conservative media is not praised is because it's inaccurate. Study after study has shown that right-wing media is something like 22% accurate, which is not what news is supposed to be. Jaron says, "Who you think will be next Republican candidate? Nobody until Trump dies. Trump is not going to let anybody else be president until he is dead." Ankara says, "Whatever happened to the government paying for IVF?" Another great Trump lie. Ankara, yeah, it seems like that guy's completely full of shit. Let's see here. Whatever happened to the Minas Morgul list that Sauerman promised to the White House counsel? Excellent bit, Fog War production. Let's see here. Timothy Chalamet says, "What do you think about Trump? He's a massive piece of shit, terrible president. We are all extremely worried about the things that him and his sycophants are doing in the government right now." Clovis LaRoche says, "How do we get back to news being based in fact or hard evidence?" I think that I honestly don't know how we do that, Clovis LaRoche, because the billionaire class is throwing unlimited amounts of money into spreading misinformation and propaganda, propping up right-wing news sources, creating new right-wing news sources. There was a network of fake local newspapers that was being spread during the 2020, the first Trump administration and shit like that. It's yeah, I don't know, man. It is that's a fucking massive question. I think the best way that we can counteract the news being so inaccurate is by talking to people in real life and making sure that we get people off of line as much as we can. Pruitt says, "What do you think about Israel?" I am fine with Israel. I don't like the government of Israel. I think that the Netanyahu government and the extreme right-wing coalition that he has built is doing a genocide against the people of Palestine, and I would hope that the people of Israel take power away from them as soon as electorally possible. J.Y. Jelly says, "Think Josh Shapiro would have a good chance in a general election despite likely losing Arab voters?" Yeah, I mean, Josh Shapiro seems pretty popular. It seems like people in Pennsylvania really like him. He seems very effective. Yeah, yeah. I say let the primary. What do you call it? Let the primary work it out. Pruitt says, "Would you go there?" I would not go to Israel. Scotty White says, "What you need to think about is the fact that redistricting isn't due until 2030. Look it up." Yes, Scotty White, that is accurate. And so it is wildly unethical what they are doing in Texas. Martin Covarrubias says, "When Dems take over control, will they hold MAGAs accountable?" They will if we do the work of making them hold MAGAs accountable. The Democratic Party has for a very long time, they get yelled at no matter what they do. And when they do good things for the American people vote them out of power for some fucking reason. And so they have become very shy about actually trying to get things done. And they've been very risk averse to the point where I forget who said it, but somebody said the Democrats are so focused on never losing that they'll never win again. And I think that is a wildly accurate thing to say about the party ethos in general. But the good thing about democracy is that we can change that. We can elect people in the primary that are going to be aggressive and are going to, not be weenies about trying to make the kind of change and holding people accountable that we want them to do. So I think that we should get more people voting in these primaries, and start asking our politicians what they're going to do about X, Y, and Z, and only vote for the ones that do the things that we're going to say. And then we need to make sure that those people get elected. Or if they don't win their primaries, we need to vote for the next best thing. All right. This dude whose name is a whole bunch of letters just said, "Who do we write into the government to lower mortgage rates? Name and job title, please." I mean, there's no one person that can do that. You know. Also, I'm not really sure if we want to be lowering mortgage rates right now with inflation peaking back up. Brennan says, "Why did all of those Democratic senators vote to continue sending weapons to Israel?" I wonder, Brennan, are you as concerned about why all of the Republican senators voted to continue sending weapons to Israel, Brennan? Because all of the Republican senators voted to send weapons to Israel, and less than half of the Democratic senators voted to continue sending weapons to Israel. So, are you equally mad at the Republicans who, by percentage, Brennan says the Republicans are fascists. Of course they did. But do you see how, when you only call out the Democrats, who are, more than 50% better than the Republicans, it makes it seem as though both parties are equally wrong on this issue, Brennan? Alrighty, Dan Blackford says, "I want to push back on the idea that weenies are bad. Weenies are the policy wonks like Buttigieg." Potentially, I think it's the Democratic Party should be a big tent of weenies and sigmas. Chris PC says, "Where are you in the political spectrum?" I'm a progressive. I'm on the left, far on the left. Clovis the Roach says, "Do you think stopping Congress from being involved in the stock market will work?" It will if we vote for the people that will do that sort of thing. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is important to note that the people who are trying to block that from happening are Republicans, even though fake populist Josh Hawley is the one who put his name on that legislation. Martin Covarrubias says, "Did you watch South Park?" I watched a little bit of it. Let's see here. Chris BC says, "Very good. I have to check if I'm on enemy territory." Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna lie about my politics. Brennan says, "You're a little higher on the two-party system and have more faith in Democrats than I do." Brennan, I think I just have a much more realistic idea of the best way to make change quickly. And, starting a new party, building up support for that party and name recognition and an infrastructure to actually win going forward, and not have them be a spoiler candidate that's just going to elect more Republicans. I think that is a longer, harder, more more fraught road than just increasing voter turnout in the primary and voting for the lesser of two evils. Alrighty, Lauren Hornbaker says, "Jared, hey, payback. Democrats will save this country. Just watch," says Jace. I mean, they will if we make them. Who said it? The Americans will do the right thing once they've exhausted every other option. I kind of feel that way. If you can't force the Republican Party to do the right thing, but you can force the Democratic Party to do the right thing. Clovis LaRoche says, "How do Democrats win back the young male votes?" I get a lot of questions about that, Clovis, about how does the Democratic Party do this? How does the Democratic Party do that? My overall theory of the case is that the game has been rigged against the Democratic Party so hard and so thoroughly that we need to do the work with them in order to achieve those goals. So how do the Democrats fix their messaging going into the midterms? We do it. We talk to people and we convince people to vote for Democrats. How do they get back young males? Talk to the young males that you know and make sure that they're not believing any misinformation and propaganda. Be clear-eyed with them about how the Republican Party is fucking them over and how Democratic policies are the policies that they want, the things that they want. All right, user a bunch of numbers says, "Didn't AOC and Matt Gaetz introduce a bipartisan bill last year to ban insider trading? Any updates?" I don't know what happened with that bill. I did a little research on this. There was like a half a dozen bills. Some of them were Democrat bills. Some of them were bipartisan bills. There's one right now that I think has gone further than anything, and that is a bill that is Democratic senators and Josh Hawley. That's the one that you should Google and see, where it's at right now. Brennan C23 says, "The game is rigged against the interests of the poor." Yes, and that is the reason why Democrats have a harder time winning elections, is because the Democratic platform helps the poor more than the Republican platform does. Brennan C23 says, "What are your thoughts on Democratic leadership withholding support for Mamdani? It's stupid. It's dumb. I hate it. I can't say enough negative things about it. I don't understand it. I think that there's probably a mix of incentives there. I think there's probably some people who are like just worried about the way that this will look electorally, and it will seem like the Democratic Party is really extreme and potentially will lose Jewish voters. And so they think they have to withhold support because they want the party to be more electable and centrist. I think that there are some people who are just like straight up bought by billionaires and some people who are just straight up racists. And so that's the reason why they're on that side of the coin. But yeah, the Democratic Party in general is on board with Mamdani and his platform. It is just a few key people who are not. Let's see here. The Advocate Times says, how do you feel about Israel versus Palestine? I support the citizens of both of those countries, and I am against the governing bodies of both of those countries. Let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says, opinions on people saying the left needs a Joe Rogan equivalent, given how podcast appeals to Gen Z. My general take is that it seems like it's not going to work, because the thing that was Joe Rogan was popular not for being political, he was popular for being Joe Rogan. And so if there is a podcaster out there who is fun and interesting and appealing the same way that Joe Rogan is, but he advocates for people on the left, like, yeah, that would be great. But I think that trying to start a podcast that is about politics but is more supportive of the left is not going to get the audience that we need to move the needle. It has to be like somebody who talks about movies and MMA and the poker tournament and we tried every pizza in this state and we'll tell you which the best one is, and then also they have politicians on as well, and they talk about dating and stuff like that. Oh, Fog of War Productions, what a sweet thing to say. Lindsay Reed says, how about Dems just go on Joe Rogan? Dems do go on Joe Rogan. Yeah, but I think that because Joe Rogan is so easily manipulatable by the right-wing people that he has on, it kind of deflates whatever value those Democrats get on Joe Rogan, let's see here. MX says, we voted Harris. My husband is upset at the BS and swears he's not voting anymore. Thoughts? I completely understand being upset and frustrated and all the negative emotions that come from doing the work and not seeing results. I get it. But I would say a couple of things in response. Number one is you giving up is what the dictators want. You giving up is what the rich assholes want. And so do not give them that gift. They already have fucking everything. They have fucking golden yachts and mega mansions and fucking private jets. They are ruining the fucking earth. They're ruining the economy. They're trying to turn us all into wage slaves. And what they would love more than anything is for all of us to just give up and accept that we're entering into a new aristocracy where they get to hand down their limitless funds to their shitty ass fucking inbred kids while we fucking till the fields until they can get robots to do it for them, and then we can all just fucking die in a gutter. So that's number one. Number two is not voting doesn't work, and we know this because voter participation in this country is in the fucking toilet. So what we are seeing now is what happens when people don't vote. So if don't vote, not voting made things better, it would have made it better already. So yeah, I would just say do the self-care that you need to get back on the team, and then get back to work, because it is just the work is the only thing that's going to save us, yeah. And I'm knowing, the reason why I did so much work to try to elect Democrats in 24 is because I didn't want to be doing this work right now for the next 4 years and worry about my safety and the safety of everybody that I love and the safety of people that I've never met. But, we're fucking here. So, what's that quote from Lord of the Rings about how people never pray to be part of, part of interesting times, but then we write stories about them for doing the work of getting us through it. All right, Fog War Production says optimism is a force multiplier. Joy and whimsy for its own sake is unbelievably powerful. I like that. Fog War Productions. Boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. Love having you here, my guy. Adam says the ones who are supposed to help us fight the fascists and the rich are on their side. I don't know if I agree with that, Adam. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Dan Blackhorse says that was from the cable guy. Jace says these people that didn't vote or voted against their own interests are the problem, just insane. Jace, I would encourage you to have radical empathy for those people because there but for the grace of God go I. Maybe if you were born into that family, going to that church, looking at that Facebook feed, maybe you would have been convinced that the way that to get positive change was to do what they did, you know? Let's see here. Angry Long Island Vets. Do you think the current strategy in the Democratic Party is working? I don't know, Angry Long Island Vet, and honestly, I don't care. I think that we should just do the work, and hopefully, the Democratic Party won't shoot itself in the foot too hard. Rondell says, "Why don't we have universal health care?" For two reasons, Rondell. Number one, because the billionaire class has infected the healthcare system and politics in order to entrench a system that makes them rich. That's number one. Number two is because it's hard. It would be really difficult to take our system that we currently have and switch it to public healthcare. Now, just to be clear, we 100% should. It would be a better system and it would be cheaper, in the short term, in the long run, it would be better. But I think it's really important that we're clear-eyed about this. Like, if everybody in politics was Bernie Sanders, it would still be really, really hard. And that's even without the rich assholes, the fucking billionaire class, and the Republican Party doing everything they can to torpedo moving us from private to public healthcare. Alrighty. Kai says, why do we pay for Israel's universal health care? Because there are a bunch of people in the government who are allowing themselves to be pushed around by Israel. And so if you don't like that, then you should vote for Democrats because they're way better on this issue than Republicans are. Tiffer says, it wouldn't be that hard. All we'd have to do is every employer would offer it with somebody hours. Tiffers, I appreciate that sentiment, but I think it is inaccurate. Think about every mechanism that that billing currently works on would have to be switched. Think about every person that currently works for a private health insurance company needing to be transitioned to more of a government system. Think about how every single doctor's office in this country is going to have to enter into negotiations with the new Universal Healthcare Committee about what payouts are going to look like, how much to charge for things, as well as every single medication. And every doctor is going to have different opinions about what things should be prescribed and what things shouldn't be prescribed and how much that should cost. So, yeah, it would be a massive undertaking, Tiffers. Now, again, we should do it. We should do it 100%, but it's going to be hard. Tiffer says, well, they just got rid of a whole bunch of things in the government. They could at least give it to, I don't know what the rest of that thing is. All right. User a bunch of numbers says, like Mamdani, but NYC election shows what's wrong with modern politics. Why is Israel relevant to NYC? That is an excellent question. And the reason why is because powerful lobbyist groups like AIPAC make it. They force it to be. And they say, we are going to hurt you politically if you do not pledge fealty to Israel. Mercy 870 says, what about the Dems taking AIPAC money like Cory Booker? So Mercy, you have stumbled into one of my favorite talking points on this show, which is that should we be holding the Democratic Party to a higher standard than the Republican Party? Because the Republican Party has been getting away with fucking murder for decades, and they can take money from whoever they want, and they can gerrymander their states to fucking high hell, to fucking rig and lie and cheat their way into winning elections. And so there are some Democrats who they try to stay competitive by taking billionaire money, taking AIPAC money, taking corporate money, doing gerrymandering in their states. But we cannot view that as a mortal sin, just trying to stay in power so that they can do the good work of being better than the Republican Party. There are some people who would argue that just that not doing those things would be enough of a message to lead to sweeping electoral victories. But we have seen time and time again that that is not the case. We have seen a lot of Democrats who refuse to take super PAC money getting fucking blown out by Republicans with, hundreds of millions of dollars in their war chest. So yeah, I would love a world where zero Democrats take APAC money, zero Democrats take PAC money, zero Democratic states do gerrymandering. But, how do we stay competitive when Republicans are cheating as much as they are? Alrighty, Average Joe, PG, great to see you again. Fun note, APAC is funded by billionaire Republican donors, and Dems take the money, hence MAGA light. Yeah, but again, there's a difference between what they do when they get in power. There's a difference between their platforms. There's a difference between outcomes. I don't know if how many people were elected in the 2020 election. How many Democrats took APAC money? But what they did once they got into power was way, way better than what Republicans are currently doing. So again, if you want to change these systems, if you want to make it so that nobody takes APAC money, that nobody does gerrymandering, you have to vote for Democrats because that's their platform. If you enable them to make those changes, then those changes will happen. But it's not going to happen when they have to power share with an obstructionist Republican Party that's going to do everything they can to not only stop you from accomplishing those goals, but to make it seem like because you couldn't accomplish those goals, you're feckless and ineffective and incompetent. Tipper says, do you support Trump? Absolutely not. He's a big piece of shit, terrible president. Hussein says, how can we take God out of Washington? You have to vote for politicians that believe in the separation of church and state, and that is the Democratic Party. The Republican Party does not believe in the separation of church and state. They are advancing a Christian nationalist agenda, and they nominate judges to every level of the judiciary up to and including the Supreme Court who also do not believe in the separation of church and state. Jacob Ellis says, Trump won, cry about it. I'm not crying about it. Your mother was crying happy tears after I fucked her last night, though. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. Tiffers S says, okay, I was worried. You don't have to worry, Larry Arizona says, no one knows what Democrats stand for. I know, Larry. Would you like to ask me? I'd be happy to tell you. User a bunch of numbers says, do Dems need to push a candidate that goes against status quo? Was that part of Trump's appeal in 2016? 100% user a whole bunch of numbers. There is one factor that has motivated more political change since 2008 than any before, and it has been change. They want different, And so Obama, change and hope. Trump, I'm going to drain the swamp. Biden, we're gonna fix the government. We're gonna get back to normal. And then Trump again. Boy, back to normal didn't work. Why don't we go fucking crazy pants again? So yeah, I think that there's definitely some appeal to a coming out of nowhere change candidates in 2028. But let's focus on the midterms in 2026, because if Democrats run the table in 2026, there's going to be a lot of damage that we can avoid going forward. Clyde Tree says Trump is out of control. He is now going to punish cities if they boycott Israel. Insanity. Yeah, Clyde, I completely agree with you. And I hope that you are joining me in the work of trying to stop this. Larry Arizona says Mondami tells us what Democrats want. Well, now I am curious what you think Mamdani is saying. What an interesting comment there, Larry. Tiffers S says we need to get all 3,000 Heritage Foundation members out of our government. Completely agree with that, Tiffers. Easiest way that we can do that is electing Democrats. BTS Beer says you need to vote for the Constitution to take God out of government. But there's no mechanism for voting for the Constitution to take God out of government, BT. We can only vote for representatives to do the work of, passing policy, appointing judges, potentially doing constitutional amendment. Appa says, why aren't Dems doing anything? Dems are doing lots of things, Appa. There are, I would say, over 24 Democrats that are playing hardball. They are barnstorming the country, holding rallies, holding town halls in districts where Republicans are refusing to hold town halls because they're tired of getting yelled at by their constituents. Yeah, there are a bunch of Democrats that are going big against the Trump administration, Let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says social media has had an extremely negative impact on politics. Completely agree with that. User a bunch of numbers. Social media has been captured by the billionaire class to spread misinformation and propaganda that convinces people to either not vote or vote for Republicans. Mushroom says you look like Norm Macdonald. No, I don't. He was not an attractive fellow, and I am. Alrighty, Appa says the Dems opposed Bernie's weapons embargo. No, they didn't. More than half of them voted for it, Appa. And all the Republicans voted against it. And so, yeah, there you go. Let's see here. Appa, the Dems opposed Bernie's weapons embargo. Again, no, no, you're wrong. More than half of the Democrats in the Senate voted with Bernie Sanders' embargo. Let's see here. I do not think that Norm Macdonald was handsome, but I'll take it. Appa says no, they didn't. That's a lie. No, Appa, you're wrong. Give it a Google. It literally just happened. Let's see here. Clyde Tree says MAGA ignoring the fact that Trump will cost them an average of $2,500 a year at the grocery store. I mean, they're not ignoring it. They're just not. They're not being told that information. And if they are, they've been taught to say that source is false. Yeah, we need to talk to these people in real life. That's the only way that we fix that. But also, there are other people on the political spectrum besides MAGAs that we can convince easier to vote out Republicans from office. Let's see here. Jojo says, why does MAGA always spew lies? Because if they told the truth, then nobody would vote for them. Tiffers said, I had to look up Norm Macdonald. You look nothing like him. I agree, Tiffers. I'm really glad that we're arguing about whether I look like Norm Macdonald and whether or not he was hot or not. Average Joe PG says, regarding the what do Dems stand for question, would you agree that it's important to point out the nuance between what the voters stand for and what the elected officials stand for? Yeah, I do. I mean, as far as like policy platform goes, I don't see a lot of daylight between Democratic voters and the platform of the Democratic Party. Now, what the Democratic Party sometimes doesn't accomplish or does accomplish, maybe doesn't mirror their platform or what the voters want 100% of the time. What I would argue, though, is that the culture of the left that we see on the internet is very much not representative of what elected Democratic officials are purporting to do. Like there's a vibe of purity politics. There's a vibe of fictional extremism on the left that doesn't really exist in elected Democrats, where I encourage people who are worried that the government is going to make you stop eating hamburgers and shit like that. Like that's not going to happen. Like there's no Democrats that are trying to do that, or the Democrats going to take all your guns. Like that's not going to happen. The Democrats is going to turn all your kids trans. That's not going to happen. Shit like that. User a bunch of numbers says, what are your opinions on someone like Hassan? Probably the loudest progressive voice. I like anybody who's in the progressive sphere that is engaging people in politics, getting them informed, making it interesting for them, and being a voice for the right side of politics. I don't agree with Hassan on a lot of things, and I don't watch his show regularly. But yeah, I think that anybody in that sphere, including people like the what's the Cenk guy, Cenk, what's his name, who's the Young Turks, Destiny, Harry, Dean, like all those guys, I think they're a net positive, even if I don't agree with them 100% of the time. All right, Scott says Trump thinks your son goes to school and comes back your daughter. Yeah, Davin says both parties are complicit. I think that both parties have politicians that are complicit, Davin, but I think that it is inaccurate to say something like that because it makes it seem like both parties are equally complicit, but they're not. The Democratic Party is way better than the Republican Party. The Republican Party is way worse than the Democratic Party. Alrighty. Chillin' Jazz says, will America ever allow BYD vehicles to be sold in the U.S.? I don't believe that the Trump administration is going to allow BYD vehicles to be sold in the U.S. because the Republican Party, they get a lot of vote share by demonizing countries like China and making it seem like they're evil and they're bad. I think that a responsible government could work with China to bring BYD electric vehicles into the country. But yeah, it's not going to happen under a Republican administration. Let's see here. Sean says, "What's your stance on clankers? Is that a reference to the Clone Wars, Sean?" Average Joe PG says the reason it feels that way to me was stated perfectly on the Breaking Points podcast. Where Crystal Ball says something like of, if you can't even start with condemning mass starvation, then I'm not interested in anything else you have to say. I agree with that sentiment 100% of the time. I do think that. So here's the thing where I get irked when people hold the Democratic Party to this impossibly high standard, where we have taught the Democratic Party through over the past couple of decades that they are going to get yelled at no matter what they do. And then we yell at them for sounding robotic and focus grouped because they're so tired of getting yelled at that they decide, all right, we need to write the most perfect sentence that no one's going to ever have a fucking problem with. And so, a Democratic politician knows that if they just flat out condemn mass starvation, then AIPAC money is going to start rolling in, and the op-eds are going to start rolling in, and the talking heads are going to start talking about, oh, this person hasn't condemned Hamas strong enough, and they're clearly pro-Hamas, et cetera, et cetera. And so they equivocate, and they do word salad, and they say, well, obviously we, blah 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 blah. Insert focus grouped talking point right here that makes it so that they can't just outright say, I condemn starvation. This is what I'm trying to get people to realize is that, the way that we train AI by like hitting it every time it gives an answer that we don't like. I mean, I heard a podcast about that's how they train the AI. Is not literally hitting it, but like, doing something it doesn't like, basically. The Democratic Party has been getting hit a lot. They have been getting beaten up by the Republican Party, right-wing media, the voting public in general. Because the shit that the Republican Party does, the electoral, the voting public doesn't punish them equally for the bad things that Republicans do. The Democratic Party gave us the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act made it illegal for health insurers to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. It saved lives. And how did the American people respond to the Democrats giving them the Affordable Care Act? They voted almost all of them out of office. This has happened time and time again. The Democratic Party was pro-union and breaking up monopolies and investing in green, safe technology. They were revitalizing small towns with safe, renewable energy jobs, places that coal and oil and car factories had abandoned and were ghost town. Democratic Party was going in there and hiring people to do solar panels and wind and all sorts of shit. And they made healthcare less expensive. And how did the American people reward the Democratic Party for that? They voted in a fucking authoritarian dictatorship, fucking Republican, fully controlled Republican government. So yeah, I get it. I get how frustrating it is to watch these fucking Democratic politicians go out there with a fucking stick up their ass and do word salad and talk like they've been focus grouped to death. But they are in a fucking abusive relationship where they do good things and they get punished, and then they do bad things and they get punished, and they don't take money and they get punished, and they do take money and they get punished. Like, they have to be so fucking 10 out of 10 in order just to get half of control of the government, And Republicans can fucking let a pandemic ravage the globe, crash the economy, spike violence, spike crime. And how do the voters reward the Democrats? How do they punish Republicans for that? They gave Democrats control of government by a 0-seat margin. We had exactly 50 fucking seats in the Senate. If that was the Democrats that did that, there would be a single fucking elected Democrat in government after that, So yeah, end of rant. Let's get back in some of these questions here. All right, Eon says, why do you think Republicans want to deny the party switch in the 1960s? They do anything that they can to make it seem like their sins are also the Democrats' sins. So while it's really easy to point at Republican politicians like Donald Trump and say, not only are these guys like racist to their core, but they are passing legislation that is racist. They are passing legislation and confirming judges that are hurting marginalized communities. Republicans can then turn around and go like, well, Democrats started the KKK and Republicans freed the slaves. And they forget to mention that the parties switched on civil rights in the 1960s. All right, user a bunch of numbers says, will opinions on AI be integrated into party platforms by 28? What would a progressive stance be? That's a really good question. User a bunch of numbers. I haven't heard anything from party leadership. My guess is that it is going to be annoyingly middle of the road. They are going to be giving the AI companies what they want while paying lip service to some sort of regulation, the bare minimum regulation. The progressive viewpoint will probably be pointing out how damaging AI is, both to employment and the environment, and how it is making our kids stupider, how it doesn't really work all that well. And so we need to pump the brakes. And then, the right is going to say that you're giving AI to China and we're going to lose the AI race. And, it's I don't really know how that fucking thing is going to work out, but I am wildly concerned. I'm at concern level high for all this fucking shit. Alrighty, let's see here. Average Joe PG says, do you think that could be blamed on the confusion created by the conflicting interests, the people and the mega donors? Average Joe PG, I think it's part of the soup, but I don't think it's the main part. I think that what we are looking at is a decades-long, potentially generations-long coup by the billionaire class to dismantle the government. And the way that they have done that is by attacking the government, attacking the Democratic Party, and enabling a Republican Party that is complicit in the agenda of dismantling the government. But that's, that's my sort of like 360, 30,000 bird's eye view, take on it. Appa says Obamacare is from the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing think tank. I don't know if it is from the Heritage Foundation, Appa, but it was originally Romney Care when he was governor of Massachusetts. Eon says, I think that AI regulation needs to come in the form of media and built-in checks for writing. That sounds good, Sam Bob says, you don't think they enabled the Democratic Party too? Do you mean the billionaire class has enabled the Democratic Party too? There's a difference between the billionaire class donating to the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party working with the billionaires to dismantle the government. Because sure, a Democrat could take money from a billionaire and then maybe they will water down their Democratic agenda in order to make those billionaires happy. But even that is a more progressive and worker-friendly agenda. Even the watered-down Democratic platform is still better for the 99% than the Republican Party's agenda. The Republican Party is just cutting regulations that keep us safe, cutting government agencies that keep us all out of poverty and keep us from fucking dying on the street, and making sure that we can afford our healthcare treatments and shit like that, and cutting taxes for the rich. And that is 100% the billionaires' agenda. If you take every Democratic administration and compare it to every Republican administration since Reagan, you will see a consistent pattern of the Republican Party doing everything that the billionaire class wants, and the Democratic Party trying to claw back at that, tepidly, maybe not as much as you or I would like, but doing it some. Way more than the Republicans do, of course, but, not enough. And then the Republicans come back in and they fucking rip the wires out of the government. They cut taxes for billionaires again. And the Democrats come back in and they try to put out some of these fires and they kind of try to raise taxes on billionaires. And maybe they don't support the unions as strongly or go against monopolies as strongly as you would want, but it's definitely better. And then the Republicans come back in and it's just blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Samoa Bob says both sides have their own billionaires. To say that what the Democratic Party has accomplished is Democrats have done things in service to billionaires. Again, Samoa Bob, I feel like you're not listening to me because you don't want to listen to me. What I'm telling you is that if you look at the net, if you look at the platforms, if you look at the net outcomes of when Democrats and Republicans are in charge, the pattern is obvious. Republicans are the party of billionaires. Democrats are the party of the working class and the 99%. But I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, but what about this one time that this one Democrat did this one thing? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about zooming out and looking at the nets, looking at the average, taking that everything that Republicans have done and everything that Democrats have done over the past 50 years. And you will see, obviously, clearly, the Republican Party is doing the bidding of the billionaires. The Democratic Party is doing the bidding of the people. All right, Dude Abides says, why are all politicians the same? Zero accountability. That is inaccurate, Dude Abides. When you say things like that, you make it seem like all politicians are equally bad, and that is giving cover for the worst politicians. Let's see here. Pat Swayze says, this guy talking out of his ass. No, I'm not. Your mom was talking out of her ass last night after I penetrated her. Let's see here. That Balchik says, what do you think Israel will fully occupy? When do you think Israel will fully occupy Gaza? Hopefully never, but I do not believe that the Trump administration is going to do the kind of pressure that will slow the Netanyahu plan of fully ethnically cleansing Palestine. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a really concerning and very upsetting, but it is accurate. Alrighty. Pat Swayze says, bro, aren't you gay? No. I mean, I know it's confusing because I fucked your mom in the ass last night, but no, I am not. Let's see here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Steve Schlatsky says, seems now more billionaires support Dems. That is inaccurate, Steve. If you look at the breakdown in how much billionaires gave to both political parties, 75% of all billionaire donations went to the Republican Party in 2024. Additionally, Trump has more billionaires in his cabinet than any president in history. Additionally, if you look at the platform of the Republican Party versus the platform of the Democratic Party, it is night and day. The Republican platform is a giveaway to the billionaire class. The Democratic platform is for the 99%. Let's see here. Dude Abide says, what is their incentive to do anything good when they are career politicians? Again, Dude Abides, you are making it seem like every politician is the same, and that helps the worst ones, the Dude Abides, because there are people in politics that are trying to do good because they are moral and they believe in trying to make things better for their constituents and for people in other states, and in other countries. And by saying that there's no incentive for any politician to do the right thing, you're making it seem like they're all a bunch of fucking Ted Cruz's and Donald Trump's, Dude Abide says the ones doing good get flushed out. That's not true. We got Bernie Sanders and Jasmine Crockett and Maxwell Frost and J.B. Pritzker and Tim Walz and Eric Swalwell and Chris Murphy and Brian Schatz. There's tons of them. Let's see here. He says, do you think Epstein was Mossad agent? I don't think so. I think the evidence is kind of thin to suggest that. I think it's very likely that a guy who had evidence that rich and powerful people were doing illegal child grapes, who were PDF files, I think it is very likely that he was talking to intelligence agency who would try to weaponize that information, but I don't know if he was a Mossad agent specifically. I think it's obvious that him and Trump were doing that shit together, Super Nacho said, he said Jasmine Crockett and Maxwell Frost, not pretzels, Super Nacho. Jasmine Crockett and Maxwell Frost. Alrighty, let's see here. Sunshine Wildflower says, Melanie Stansbury. I don't know who that is, but I'm guessing you're saying that because you like her. Alrighty, excellent questions today, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. I hope that everybody here has checked out my Discord and seen the work thread and are doing some of the work, because I got to tell you guys, when I wake up every fucking day and I see the news, I get more and more fucking scared about what is going on in this country and more convinced that the only way that we can fix this is by being activated and organized and engaged citizens. And so if you're a regular watcher of the show, I hope that you're doing the work. I hope that you've been to the Discord and you've seen what the work is. And if we all do a little bit of work, then nobody has to do a lot of work. So just let's recruit other people to join us in this fight, because this is the crusade, guys. In order to fix this shit, we have to do the work. There's no person or agency or group of people that is strong enough to take on the kind of power that the billionaires and the Republican Party have right now. So hopefully let's all do that, guys, so that I can fucking, sleep easy at night without fucking worrying about having to flee in the evening. A says, do you think Trump runs in 28? Without question, Donald Trump is going to try to stay in office until he dies. I don't know if that means canceling elections. I don't know if that means running for a third term specifically, but he's going to try. Lindsay Reed says, wish Dems weren't so polished sometimes. I get that, Lindsay Reed. Did you already hear my speech about why they are so polished? So, let me know if you heard that or if I need to repeat it. Let's see here. Melanie Stansbury is New Mexico. She's fighting for us all. Yeah, that sounds great. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. Scott Clara says Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was a Mossad agent, which maybe he was. He had connections to some Mossad agents, I think. K2 says getting tacos today. I do not believe that I am getting tacos today. All right, so Lindsay Reed, the reason why Democrats are so polished is because for 50 years they have been getting yelled at no matter what they do. Actually, probably longer than 50 years. They do good things for the American people, and then the American people vote them out of office. They passed the Affordable Care Act, which saved lives and made it so that insurance companies couldn't discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. And what happened? They were getting yelled at left and right by the media, by constituents saying they don't want government takeover of healthcare. They don't want the death panels. And the Democrats are like, what the fuck, death panels? What the fuck are you talking about? And then they lost the midterm elections by like a lot. The Biden administration, same thing. Record investments in green energy, siding with the unions, breaking up monopolies, bringing down healthcare costs, and the American people rewarded them by voting them all out of office. So yeah, no matter what Democrats do, they are both too far to the left and too far to the right, and doing too much and doing too little. They don't take billionaire money and they lose elections. Then they take billionaire money and they lose elections, and they're getting yelled at no matter where they go. There's no place that Democrats go where they can get a consistent fucking tongue bath the way that Republicans can go to right-wing media for their tongue baths. So they have learned, they're like in an abusive relationship with America, where they have been taught that no matter what they do, they get hurt. So they try their best to just be as perfect as they possibly can so that people don't yell at them, and they have to do word salad and constantly equivocate and make all that sort of shit. All right, Average Joe PG says, not a question, so feel free to ignore. I think you made a good point earlier about impossible to achieve purity tests by Democratic voters. But I think that given how 80+% of Democratic voters polled are unequivocally against what Israel is doing, being supportive of human rights seems like a natural agreement. If Zionists and Islamophobic bigots want to keep playing your anti-Semitic bullshit, then let them go vote with the rest of the sociopathic MAGAs. Completely agree with that, Average Joe PG, but the thing that I think you're forgetting is that the down ballot Democrats, who are not as famous as like your AOCs and Bernie Sanders, they get their fucking asses kicked by AIPAC, regardless of if they are perfect on this issue. Cori Bush, Jamal Bowen, they lost their primaries because they had the audacity to say that what Israel was doing was war crimes and we should not be supporting them. So yeah, it's not about not appealing to the base or not. It's about having to deal with the realities of how difficult it is to get elected with, Citizens United and gerrymandering and the Senate map and the Electoral College, with appealing to their base and making sure they have access to donor money and not wanting to piss off extremely well-funded organizations like AIPAC that are, extremely okay with funding primary challengers against them, Alrighty, says, is there any future in green politics? Yeah, but you gotta vote for Democrats. They're the only ones that will do that. Mia's LV Adventure, good to see you again. Coco Clifford says, there are a number of Dems who are famous supporting the crimes. Jeffries, Harris, Schumer. I do not know what that means, Coco Clifford. K2 says, so AIPAC picks our politicians, not the citizens. That is kind of accurate, K2, but you're being a little hyperbolic. AIPAC puts a lot of money and influence into our politics, and so they get to move the needle. And so if a politician can lose a race by 1% and AIPAC can get what it wants, they will put $1 billion into that race to do that thing. But we can stop that, K2. Like, we still have the power. The reason why AIPAC does what they do, and the reason why billionaires do what they do, is because it works. Because they have shown that money gets votes. And that the exceptions to the rule are small, marginal. The number of elections where the person who lost had more money or less than the opposite. Alrighty, Pupster says money rules both parties. Yes, but only one party does the bidding of money, and that is the Republican Party. All right, let's see here. Lauren Hornbaker says he is correct, Jarrett. I mean, it's hyperbolic, but because we, the voters, pick, but we let ads and propaganda influence us to either not vote or vote for the politicians that AIPAC supports. We're getting tricked. We're getting conned, guys. All right, Average Joe PG says, I would push back by saying they would be likely to recoup those lost votes by having a greater appeal with most younger voters. Average Joe PG, I want to agree with you so badly. I've seen how easy it is for a Democrat who's not famous the way that a Mamdani or an AOC or a Bernie Sanders is. Have the right policies, say all the right things, but because their message can't get out, the voters who would counteract all of that influence by the billionaire class and by AIPAC, they still lose their election. Coco Clifford says Sanders and AOC are wishy-washy. All right, we got somebody in here who's fucking proving my point about how we judge Democrats by such a harsher standard. It makes it seem like both parties are equally terrible. Chris Wilco says, would you agree the Israel lobby AIPAC runs Washington? I would agree that they have a lot of influence over Washington, but I don't think they run Washington. There seems to be this disconnect that people have between their vote and their voter behavior and the people that are in charge and what they do. Because if we all agreed to only vote for politicians that spoke out against the billionaire class, then we would not have any politicians who were funded by the billionaire class. It is as simple as that. But, people believe propaganda. People believe misinformation. And the billionaires are out there convincing people to either not vote or to vote for Republicans. And that's what happens. C. Flan says, it's the truth. The big donors will never back a moderate Democrats. That's inaccurate, C. Flan. Big donors often back moderate Democrats. Bad Goddess Nails says, please give a few examples as to why Democrats have been better than Republicans. Okay, so there's bad things that Republicans do, and then there's good things that Democrats do. The bad things that Republicans do, for example, they put people in charge of agencies that are antithetical to that agency. So they'll put like a coal baron in charge of the EPA, or they will put a billionaire in charge of the Federal Trade Commission, like a billionaire who's been scamming people with junk fees, for example, and they will, put somebody with absolutely zero experience in charge of the Department of Education or the military, so that those agencies can't actually work and actually end up harming the 99%. And then, they will cut government services like welfare, and Medicare, and Medicaid, and they will cut taxes for the billionaire class. The Democratic Party doesn't do any of that. So even just saying that just not doing the bad things that Republicans do makes the Democratic Party better than the Republican Party. But good things that the Democratic Party has done, they supported the unions. Joe Biden was the first president ever to walk a picket line. He appointed somebody to the head of the NLRB that was siding in favor of unions over corporations. He appointed somebody to the Federal Trade Commission that was breaking up monopolies for the first time in a generation, a massive investment in green technology, an infrastructure bill for the first time in over a decade, a gun safety legislation for the first time in over a decade, capping the cost of insulin, capping the cost of asthma inhalers, making it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions, in addition to just staffing agencies with people that are going to do the job of that agency. All right. There you go. Let's see here. There you go, Bad Goddess Nails. I hope that was informative for you. K2 says, nobody is immune to propaganda. Biggest person wins. That is accurate, K2. Kellen Varney says, what do you think about the Sydney Sweeney commercial? I think that the rhetoric around it is kind of stupid. I think that it's clear that she is a Republican person. She's got a lot of family members that are MAGA, so she's always going to be associated with that movement, and that movement is intimately connected to white supremacy. And so being in a commercial like that, it's so obvious the connection. Now, whether the advertisers were specifically trying to forward a white nationalist agenda or whether they were just like accidentally leaned into that, I have no idea. But it is stupid, and I think that we should 100% be calling out people on the right for being part of this disastrous movement. Alrighty, let's see here. Bad Goddess says, "Yep, the PACT Act, Chicks Act, Science Act were wonderful. Yeah, there are so many good things that I forget to mention. Many of them." C. Flan says, "Are conservatives bad or is it just MAGA?" So I would argue, C. Flan, that there's a difference between conservatives and MAGA, but that they're both bad. I think that a conservative like a Mitt Romney or a Liz Cheney are still bad because their agenda is still trickle-down economics and cutting regulations that protect people from things like, employer abuse and pollution and shit like that. MAGA is worse because they are, part of a fascist movement. And when I say, conservatives and MAGA, I'm talking specifically about not the voters. I'm talking about talking heads like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk. I'm talking about elected officials like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and, all those pieces of shit. But voters I have 100% empathy for because anybody can get fooled by propaganda. Alrighty, let's see here. C. Flan says, "Tell me what I need to know." What I mean, that's a very loaded thing you just said there, C. Flan. Can you tell me what you mean by it? Alrighty, It's the Rocketeer says, "Not all conservatives are bad, but all Nazis are conservatives." That is accurate. Average Joe PG says, "Closing on a lighter note, I think the question we all want answered is how much would..." Okay, Average Joe. All right. Thank you for being here, everybody. Excellent questions today. And I just hope that y'all will do the work. And I appreciate all of the support that you guys give me, whether it is the free kind, like liking and sharing and telling your friends how great my channel is, or the paid kind. You don't have to do the paid kind, but you can if you like. I have a Patreon you can join. I got 4 patrons right now. They're dope as hell. You can buy things from my store on my website, jaredbryanston.com. That's where you can find the Patreon also. And you can send gifts on TikTok and YouTube and Twitch and subscribe and do all the good stuff, because, it is your support and your questions that make it so that I can do this show. Let's see here. Sleeflon says, "You just think anyone with a difference of opinion is wrong." That's not true, Sleeflon. That is not what I said. I said that conservatives believe in trickle-down economics, and that is proven to be complete and utter bullshit. But you're not saying anything, Sleeflon. You're not saying any details that I can get into specifics with you on. You're making broad generalizations. So, maybe you can tell me like a thing that you think I said that was wrong, or something that you think I said that was unfair, and we can get into it. GT Ricksism says, "If you vote Democrat or Republican, it's your fault. You have no right to complain. Move to Ukraine." What a weird thing to say. Democrats and Republicans don't have an opinion. They just regurgitate their masters' opinions. That is not accurate and also not a question. So if you don't ask the questions, then I'm going to kick you out of here. Smooch Lip says, "Thoughts on Zoran?" I like him a lot. And the billionaire class is going to continue to try to take him down. So we should all be working to continue to support the agenda and the election of politicians like Mamdani, because without our support, the billionaire class will successfully torpedo them. Alrighty, everybody. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I hope that you will continue to join and tell your friends about how great my show is and tell them to join also. And I hope that you will reach out to me if you have any questions about, politics or how to get involved. I hope you will go to the Discord and do the work, because guys, I'm fucking freaking out over here reading the news every fucking day. I don't think we have enough people doing the work, guys. I think we need more. Riverboat Ron says, "Do you think Epstein worked for some intelligence agency?" I think that he probably worked with, but not for. I don't think that he was like a Mossad agent. I think that potentially intelligence agents were utilizing him as a resource. Alrighty though. Average Joe, thank you for being here. It's the Rocketeer, thank you for being here. Reba M says, why is they letting Trump steal the midterm election? I'm not sure what you mean by they, because if you're talking about Republicans, then the reason why they are letting him steal the midterm elections is because they are on board with his anti-democracy, pro-fascist dictator agenda. And if you're talking about Democrats, then they are not letting him. They're doing everything they can to fight back, but they have a lot less money and power with which to fight back, Reba. So, they might not win, but they're doing the work. If we join them, if we help them, then they will have a better chance of winning. Torin Stanford says, what do you think about us moving 2 nuclear submarines close to Russia? It is blatantly, inflammatory and escalatory. And Donald Trump was supposed to end every global conflict on day one. And meanwhile, he's instigating nuclear tensions with Russia because it's a fucking dick measuring contest with Vladimir Putin. It's fucking so stupid. And I hope that everybody sees how full of shit Donald Trump is with every minute that passes. He is going back on shit that he has said and promised. He's such a fucking moron, Zonia says, have you read how nonviolence protects the states by Peter Geldenruz? If yes, should Dems implement how nonviolent protects the state? I have not read that, but I have heard interviews with Erica Chenoweth, who says the opposite, that nonviolent movements are more successful than violent movements. Reba M says, just sick, we won't ever get no justice. Reba M, I am fucking with you. I share your frustration and pessimism sometimes, but I think the reality of the situation is that we have to do a lot of work in order to fix this. And I don't think that we can just sit around and hope that Democrats or good billionaires will save us. I think we have to do the work, Reba. And I'm pissed about it. Like, I don't want to be in this position. And it's because bad people with a lot of money and power have put us in this position. And so now we have to do the work to stop them, Reba. But yeah, I would just say that our cynicism and our pessimism is what the people in power want and what the billionaires want. And so, whenever I feel, very sad and pessimistic and angry, I want to give up, I just remember that that's what the billionaires want. And so I don't. Torrin Stanford says, do you think we'll go to Russia? I'm skeptical that we will, Riverboat Ron says, do you support a 2-state solution to the Israel-Gaza conflict? I do. And I think that we should stop sending money and weapons to Israel because they have been found guilty of war crimes, and many objective organizations, including those based in Israel, have come to the conclusion that what Israel is doing is genocide, and we should not be supporting that. Zonia says, better to push nonviolence, etc. Governments like Trump prefer peaceful protests. I don't know if I agree with that. I think that the data says nonviolence works better, and the violence of nonviolent protests helps the Trump administration. Think about the Black Lives Matter protests that happened in 2020. And, the FBI did a study on that, and they found that 99% of those protests were peaceful, and that the violence and property destruction could not be pinned on people that were part of the BLM movement, that there was some evidence to suggest that right-wing agitators were trying to make that movement seem like it was bad. The violence of the chaos surrounding the BLM protests, that again was not the fault of the BLM protests, convinced people to vote for more authoritarian, centrist Democrats who were more interested, who went out there and said law and order a bunch of times. A bunch of progressives lost to Republicans, because of that violence. And during the protests in LA this summer, again, 99% peaceful, there were a couple of Waymos that were set on fire, and that is all that was on the news. And so everybody believed there was massive violence and rioting in Los Angeles. And then Trump used that to send in the military, the fucking Marines, the National Guard into Los Angeles. You know, I think that without that, we don't get the Marines and the National Guard in Los Angeles, you know? Or if we do, then we get more people in America pissed at Trump for doing that. And we attract more people to our cause, you know? But let me know what you think about that. All right. Let's see here. Matthew McClung says same things as Democrats with January 6th. Matthew McClung, the difference is that Democrats didn't do the violence on January 6th. It was MAGA that was doing the violence. All right, Average Joe PG says, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Chenoweth meant that nonviolent resistances are more likely to result in a non-authoritarian replacement. That I do not know, Average Joe. I took sort of like the bird's eye interpretation of it, which is just nonviolence better than violence. But you know, I'm sure that there are nuanced specifics that I am missing in that assessment. Matthew McClung says, "Can you explain more?" Absolutely. You know, Zonia says, "I completely understand what you're saying, but I feel they've done that MAGA regime and away with it." Can you clean that up, Zonia? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Matthew McClung, you said, "Can you explain more?" Well, tell me what you meant by same things as Democrats with January 6th. Tell me what you meant by that comment. Torrin Sanford says, do you think us bombing Iran nuclear sites was a good or a bad thing, as it did stop them from getting a nuclear weapon? So it did not stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. It delayed them, and our intelligence agencies are saying that it delayed them by weeks or months at best. It was dumb. It was a stupid thing to do. Trump didn't want to do it. He got dog walked by Netanyahu. He got forced into doing it by Netanyahu because he's so fucking easy to manipulate. You know, we spent billions of dollars, you know, doing this stupid fucking bomb run that was not going to achieve our end goal. It just delayed it. Whereas we had a nuclear arms agreement with Iran from the Obama administration that Donald Trump threw in the garbage. And he was trying to negotiate a new one. Fucking idiot. He had a perfectly good one. Now he's trying to negotiate a new one. And he had to stop those negotiations because Israel forced his hand into bombing Iran. So yeah, it was a dumb thing to do. I don't know what the solution is now. Now it seems like, you know, our relationship with Iran is so much further away from having some sort of nuclear agreements. I don't know. You know, like, are we committed now to just doing some fucking bomb runs every 6 months to try to push the nuclear program back further? Like, I don't fucking know. Will we even be able to? Will they just start digging, you know, deeper mines to do their nuclear programs in where our bunker busters can't reach? You know, I don't know. Alrighty, let's see here. Zonia says they get away with violence and excuse it away. The MAGA regime. Let's see here. They even get pardoned, jobs on ice, etc. Yes, Zonia. Yes, I agree with you. But I think the thing that we need, Zonia, more than anything, is to add people to our movement. I think the best way to do that is to be the nonviolent side of a violent movement. You know, the same way that Martin Luther King Jr. was the nonviolent side of a violent racist movement. The problem is we don't have enough people on our side right now. We don't have enough people paying attention to the news. We don't have enough people getting upset about what's going on. We don't have enough people organizing and recruiting and putting political pressure on their representatives. They're getting away with this because they think they can get away with it because they think America is sleepwalking right now. And, you know, maybe they're right. Maybe they're wrong. I think that the way that we get people on our side is by being nonviolent, by being the nonviolent movement. Alrighty. Let's see here. Matthew McClung, still waiting for you to tell me what you meant by your thing. You know, Zonia says the Black Panthers got a lot done. You know, you look at the Black Panthers, you look at the Weather Underground movement. I think an argument could be made that it was detrimental to the cause. You know, and I don't know enough about the history to say specifically, but I would just point out that politicians today who associate with people who were associated with the Black Panthers or the Weather Underground, they get demonized, and they lose their elections because of it. You know, Bad Goddess Nails, good to see you again. Cuz 808, good to see you again. Let's see here. Torrin Stanford says, "What do you think of Trump doing the 50-day agreement to make peace between Russia and Ukraine 210?" I don't think anything's going to come with it. He's bad at diplomacy. He's getting dog walked by Putin. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't really see. The war is not going to end until Putin is out of power, because Putin doesn't want the war to end. And there's nothing that Donald Trump is going to do to force Putin to do that. Because Putin has a lackey in Trump. And so if Trump tries to push him around, Putin is going to, release whatever damning information or turn his bots against Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a report that came out years from now that said that the reason why this Epstein story isn't going away is because Putin is making it not go away, So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. But I just know that Trump is not negotiating a peace deal right now. Cause you don't get to say, bro, ignore my comment. You're a regular here. I've answered 1,000 of your questions, my guy. And also, don't say Jews like that, man. Come on, dude. You have to understand, cuz why just writing Jews like that would be offensive to somebody like me, my guy. Can you not? Cuz my Mormon friend, my Mormon regular, Yeah, I know you meant Israel, but come on, man. You got to be better than that. It's okay, cuz I forgive you. You're a regular. Reba M says, "Can you really have the Democrats arrested for not showing up to vote?" I don't know, Reba M, but at least they're trying, and Democrats have tried this in the past. I don't know how successful they've been in the past, but at least they're doing something. But Republicans, again, they have a lot of electoral power in Texas to do whatever they want, and they have a lot of power in the judiciary and in the federal government. So, the Democrats are playing a game that has been rigged against them, and so without our help, they will lose. So we have to do the work. All right. Cuz I would say that Israel and AIPAC probably has more influence over U.S. politics than the cartels in Mexico. Alrighty. Torrin says, "Do you think China and Taiwan will go to war in the next 2 years?" I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Joey says, "Why should I ask a comedian about politics?" Because I know a lot about it. Joey, just because somebody's a comedian doesn't mean that they don't know about things and they are not smart. Tell me, ask me any question that you want about politics, Joey, and I will prove to you that I know about things. Ozzy Des says, "Are the hermaphrodites safe in America?" I have no idea. I'm not up on hermaphrodites issues. Let's see here. Average Joe PG over on Twitch says, "An important ingredient of propaganda is the hyper focus on what's called fringe violence, when agitators cause violence during a nonviolent movement that are not part of that movement. This makes the nonviolent movement appear not only violent, but that violence is more prevalent than reality." Completely agree. Talat says, "I found 6 videos of Biden, then 4 videos of edit Biden. GOP passes, sees 0 Nightcore videos." I don't think that Talat, unacceptable dissolution of USA. I will not. I'm totally done. I don't know what you're saying there, Talat. Sorry. It's the Rocketeer says, "The Dems weren't successful in the past because they ran out of funds to stay out state. With Pritzker funding them, it'll be much more effective this time around." Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Texas. It's the Rocketeer. Yeah, well, fingers crossed, man. Let's hope it does. Ozzy, you're out of here, man. I'm done with your nonsense. See you later, everybody. All right, everybody. I'm gonna get out of here. So, yeah, just do the work and hit me up if you've got any questions. My crusade does not end when the live stream ends. So if you got any questions, if you want to reach out, don't be shy. Email me through my website. hit me up. Lauren, are you still here? I'm so glad that I finally found your message. I don't know why it took me so long to get it. And yeah, do the work, everybody. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. 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 Goodbye. Goodbye.